What the Tech is sponsored by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks, with more than 100,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature. For a free audiobook of your choice, go to audiblepodcast.com/Andrew. And by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ.
What the Tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarian, and with me as always is my lifelong friend. We've been friends since we were children, Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
I am pretty well. How are you?
That is a fact, right? We've been friends since, I guess, maybe second or third grade.
Well, you are apparently younger than I thought you were.
How old did you think I was?
I don't know. Everyone seems young to me.
It's the internet. It takes away the years. This week we are going to have a free-for-all of a show because I had a couple ideas, but Paul actually came up with a better idea, and we're going to talk about what to purchase this holiday season. What's a good buy, what's not a good buy, and everything that Paul hates. I actually get people things that I don't like, ever. I just want them to have awful gifts every year. But Paul might have some good ideas, so we're going to talk about that. But before we go into all of this, I kind of want to revisit something we discussed last week, because I had no idea how controversial this was. Apparently, the cloud is extremely controversial.
I should have warned you, because I knew going into it that this was going to be controversial.
I had no idea. I think we spoke about this once before. And
Well, I think I said the way I said it was, every time I talk about something like this, I get emails from people from Australia, and from other places. And it's always the same argument, internet is expensive. Connectivity is not always there. It's like, the same old arguments. And like, yeah, I know. I tried to present the cloud thing as a goal. And in fact, I talked myself into something that I called on the show Zero Data, which I think is kind of a cool name. And, like Microsoft's Cloud OS, it's not necessarily a real thing. It is a goal. It's an endpoint. Not even an endpoint. It's really like a target on the horizon. It's a place to go. A goal.
Yeah.
It's the easiest way to say it. So, but yeah, people get a little freaked, especially about some particular things. We've talked in the past about all the awful times we've had managing our media collections, and there are people who really hang on that stuff, and they live on that stuff, and they don't like to hear putting it up in the cloud. They don't like to hear I don't have complete control over my stuff. I had a related, not an argument, but a discussion with a guy on Twitter a few weeks ago about podcasts and how they've changed on Windows Phone. And, he was saying that in the old days, like, 6 weeks ago.
6 weeks ago.
You could download podcasts in the Zune PC software, manage them on your computer. You could sync them to the phone using a USB cable. You could listen to them out in the world, and then you could come back and sync them again, and it would sync the place where you had listened. And I guess at that point you could start listening in the Zune PC software and pick up where you left off. And this is no longer capable or possible rather in Windows Phone 8. And he was saying that this was a huge problem and everything. I said I don't understand why you need to do that. I don't get it. There are many issues of podcasting in Windows Phone 8. I don't want to get into that whole thing, but assuming that you live in the United States and you can subscribe to them on the phone, I mean, I don't understand the point of syncing it back to the computer. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. That's like the old way of doing things. In fact, it's contrary to the whole point of Windows Phone, which is a system designed for this cloud computing thing that we were talking about last week.
Yeah,
it is designed for that type of system. In fact, the old way of doing podcasts was one of the ways in which Windows Phone 8 and Windows Phone 7 did not live up to its own promise of, putting all of the data in the cloud.
I mean, do you download your pod? What do you do when you listen to a podcast? Do you download your podcast, or do you just stream it, it's being streamed over the service?
Yeah. I download them to devices because this is for me. I mean, and again, I don't mean to promote this as this is what you need to do. I don't mean it like that. I mean, I personally will listen to these things on devices. In my case, they're Windows Phone devices. And
so do I. I mean, I rarely download a podcast on my laptop. If I'm listening to it, I'll probably go to the website and I'll stream it from their website. But I don't even, and this is funny because this is my business, but I don't necessarily subscribe to podcasts on iTunes and have it downloaded for me. I don't do that.
Okay, but I guess my point was only that we all have our own system of doing things, whatever it may be. But in the case of podcasts, it seems to me like if you're going to download podcasts to a device, whatever it is, an iPhone, an iPod Touch, an iPad, whatever it is, that's where you listen to podcasts, right? Like you don't need them on everything. You don't need them synced. You don't need that. Like it's not that important,
And it's dated. I mean, that's the whole thing with a podcast. It gets dated after,
Yeah, and if I'm sitting here in front of my computer and for some reason want to listen to a podcast, well, that device still works. It works as well here as it does on a plane or, in the world, like I was today on the way home from Boston on the train. So, there are systems for things like Kindle books, which are all cloud stored and do whisper sync that syncs your settings in the cloud. Audiobooks do the same exact thing. There are systems for doing that with podcasts too, by the way. There's some apps that do that store the podcast up in the cloud and your position and all that kind of stuff. But, it's like computers, the computer car comparison is very interesting to me because computers are still in many ways where cars were in the early days where you had to be a mechanic to know to own one, that you had to be one in order to own the vehicle.
Absolutely. And that's changing.
Yeah. And I think that part of this give and take when it comes to like cloud computing or some of these related topics, like if we talk about tablets today would be another one. People get freaked out about the simplicity stuff that's on the iPad or in Windows 8. And I don't want this, and I want Windows side by side. I want this, and I want this. And, we get very caught up in our what is now kind of an old-fashioned way of doing things. And we sort of forget that, these devices are supposed to make life easier, not more difficult. And we find when we're the ones spending the time and energy managing things, the computer's not doing its job. That's the device, the computing device, whatever it is. I mean,
but do you think we make it difficult for us and it's actually simplified? But because we
it's a combination of things. First of all, we're not there yet, right? It's like I said, this zero data thing. It's a goal. It's not. It doesn't mean that we hit some date and we're there. I mean, you can look at what you do with a computer and in your own life, and maybe you can do things a little differently. I read coincidentally, there was an editorial in the New York Times this week called something along the lines of an ode to photo books or to photo albums or something like that. This person was decrying the fact that we're walking away from paper-based photos. She misses those. How you could share them with someone and say, "Look, here's a book of my photos." That's ludicrous.
It is crazy. That is crazy.
Because the point of technology isn't always better, but good technology does make your life easier. And like I think I talked about YouTube and putting, and I haven't done it yet, but I talked about the notion I think about putting personal videos up on YouTube. Yeah. I suppose I could keep those tapes in a drawer, and then every once in a while when my family comes over for some anniversary or something, I could pop in a tape that I recorded of my son, who's now 14, when he was a baby. And if I'm lucky, I have the machine that plays that tape. Or I could put this thing in a place where everyone who knows this child can get to it at any time. And if they ask me, I can give them a link that will give them, show them a video of my kid when he was a baby. It's not, I don't mean to say it's like always better, but it is a journey. We're going to get there. But, photo albums are the same thing. I mean, putting photos in an album and keeping them on a shelf in your house is the analog version of taking photos off of a digital camera, putting them on a hard drive on a PC, and just praying to God that thing never dies.
But it seems like there's a major disconnect. Like now, most people are using their phones as their camera, and they're keeping the photos on their camera, but they're not on their phone, but they're not putting it anywhere else. I had this discussion with somebody about this, and they put some on Facebook, and they'll put it on.
You'd have to try hard not to put them somewhere else. See, on an iPhone, you have iCloud and PhotoStream, which does that. On Windows Phone, we have SkyDrive. On Android, you have Google Plus. I haven't looked at the very latest version of Android. In the near past, you had to go and enable that, but it's a free thing, and you just do it, and it puts all those photos up there. You know, you'd have to try hard not to have your stuff sync somewhere. You know, and at least it's somewhere, right? Because obviously, if you don't want to get into a thing where you lose your phone and you lose your pictures. But as recently as a little while ago, a couple of months ago, a couple of years ago, whatever it may be, depending on what kind of phone you were using, to make sure that that didn't happen, you had to plug your phone into the computer and manually do that. And what I'm saying is that's just not better. It's just not. I mean, you know, I do think that it makes sense to occasionally go through the photos, pick out a couple of them that are nice, and maybe give them a good name or something. Maybe share them on Facebook or however you want to share, whatever. But the important first step is to get them replicated somewhere else, preferably physically somewhere else. And that's what the cloud stuff does. I mean, it gets it off of the device so that if you lose your phone, you didn't lose the stuff that's really important about the phone.
Yeah, like with my phones, and last week we spoke about the photos. With my phone, I've set up Dropbox so it automatically syncs any picture I take instantly. It'll sync it to my Dropbox. So I still have a physical copy on my phone, but everything's in Dropbox. If I lose my phone, if my phone breaks, no worries. If I need to do a clean install of the OS, no problem for me. I just install Dropbox, and I could re-download everything if I want to locally, or I could start over. But I had an interesting thing happen over the weekend. We spoke about cloud computing, and I haven't really invested too much time into putting my MP3s on the cloud. So I use iTunes. My laptop is a Mac, so I signed up for iTunes Match. It was interesting, Paul, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
And this was a fascinating thing. So I signed up for iTunes Match. It's $24 for the year. Not bad. It puts everything in the cloud. And if it finds it in the store, it'll match it to a 256 kilobit AAC file, an M4A file.
Yep.
But what it does, like, this was a thing that was missing for me. I would have liked it to say, hey, we noticed that your file is a crappier version than what we have. Would you like to upgrade all your files locally too? And you hit yes.
Well, okay, but actually, as a tip for you, now it doesn't behoove Apple to do that. I hear what you're saying. I
would have liked it to do that.
Okay, but one thing you could do is once that collection is in iTunes Match and it's all there and you know it's there, it's got all your playlists.
Delete everything.
Yeah, wipe out your Mac or whatever.
That's what I did.
Go to a different one. Download it all.
No, that's exactly what I did. I deleted everything.
Why not?
No, I deleted the entire library and I resynced it overnight. It was like 4,000 songs I came down to from 8,000. I deleted 4,000 MP3s.
Yep.
So I resynced everything. It's great. But I had a very difficult time deleting these files. Psychologically, it was like, why do and I sort of, do I have another copy on my on a backup drive?
You could have just moved them to a USB hard drive, just in case.
Yeah, I mean, I could have done that, but it was.
I've done this enough that
I
don't even worry about this anymore.
I know you're all invested, but I was really worried that do I have a backup? And I finally said, you know what? It's on the cloud. Who cares? It's somewhere. Well, I just delete everything. I hit delete, and I felt like I was liberated.
I think you should be a little more careful. But the way I think of it is, trust technology, but be safe too. I mean,
yeah, but I think this is the problem, and I think this is the issue that a lot of people face is that they don't want to let go of the physical files. And I understand
it is literally, you know what this is? It's called tradition. It's not that this is better. It's not that it even makes any sense. It's just that we're just used to doing it that way.
Yeah.
We can't explain why. There's a Christmas tree sitting in the next room, right? So my family is ostensibly Christian or something. There's a reason why you put a tree in your house and put ornaments on it. I don't know what that reason is. I don't actually understand why we do it. I just know that my kids look forward to it, and it's a big deal. And so do my cats, by the way. But it is a tradition, right? Now, someone's going to try to explain why we do it. Please don't. I don't actually care.
Yeah.
But that's a tradition. That's all that is, and breaking out of that mindset. I don't mean breaking out of the Christmas mindset, but breaking out of that mindset with this technology stuff in particular is fascinating to me. The stuff that we do with computers, like the MP3 collection thing. MP3s did not become viable until roughly around the year 2000. So this is not a thing we've been doing for decades. You know, in my lifetime, when I was a child, the first music that I purchased were 45 records.
Wow.
And at that time, there were cassettes out in the marketplace. There was still 8-track around, albums, obviously. You know, the 78s had kind of come and gone. And then, of course, CDs came in. Remember, they had like super audio CDs that never really took off. And, you know, things have evolved. I mean, so there's examples of a lot of music. There are examples of a lot of movies that I've owned in different formats. You know, I have to say, one of the nice things about music in particular, and the reason why maybe music is one of the good places to start with this kind of transition, is that content is now DRM free and is of reasonably high quality. You know, movies obviously are full of DRM, and so you've got that as an issue. In the short period of time that I've been buying content online, I mean, there are multiple services, all completely incompatible with each other.
But do you think that's going to change too? I mean, music was DRM'd, and you know, most places are now DRM free. Do you think video is going to follow, or do you think the people that are in charge of these things have a stronger grasp on video being out there on the internet?
You know, no, I think it's just a different kind of content. I think it's just different. You know, we consume music very differently than we do movies or TV shows. Music is something you listen to often while you're doing something else, which is not typically the case when you're watching a TV show or movie. You're kind of focused on that thing. No, I don't actually think we're going to get to the point where iTunes is giving away DRM-free movies. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation because I was so surprised when we got all the emails from people saying, yeah, you're absolutely right, you got to go all to the cloud. And there are people saying, no, I don't want my stuff on there.
Well, it's polarizing.
It
still is.
It is.
It's polarizing.
But I think it is changing. I mean, over the last couple of years, I mean, think about it. Our email's all on the cloud now. Our photos are now on the cloud. Let's talk about Facebook. That's what you're doing. You're pretty much putting your photos on the cloud. Pretty much everything is on there now.
Yeah, and there are legitimate issues to debate, especially around particular services and so forth. I mean, Facebook is a privacy issue of some kind and all that kind of thing. I mean, Facebook is so terrible, and yet I use it because it's so wonderful. I've had, as recently as this past weekend, I was able to wish my sister a happy birthday on her actual birthday, which I miss every year because I think it's a couple of days later than it is.
Yeah.
I've gotten together with guys I went to college with because of Facebook. And I actually missed this because I was away, but as recently as sometime in the past 30 days, they all got together. I didn't make that one, but we do that once or twice a year now, and that's because of Facebook. So that doesn't equate to Facebook is good, let's move on. There's still a discussion to be had around all this stuff, and I think one of the important things that needs to be discussed is which of these ecosystems, which of these services, make the most sense.
Well, Facebook recently, I mean, this week I was using Facebook on my phone and a little pop-up came and says, hey, do you want to allow Facebook to automatically upload every image you take on your phone to Facebook?
Yeah.
And I said no.
Right. And so I did too, although it's interesting to me that they want to do that. I didn't look at it the phone I use is not, that I got that on is not one I use regularly, so it didn't really matter. But I'm curious about that kind of thing because putting your photos in Facebook, if you could do it in a way that didn't automatically get publicized to all of your friends
I think that's what it is. I believe it's...
yeah, that's not horrible.
No, they're putting it on the side. Like this
will change, but as of right now, I mean, Facebook doesn't charge you anything for putting stuff there. So you could conceivably upload every photo you've ever taken, and they would never... will today not charge you for that. I mean, maybe over time that changes.
It is interesting. So that was our discussion about cloud. I know. We just wanted to touch on it for a little bit. I don't want to make it the whole show because I think Paul and I could go back and forth on this for the entire show.
You could make a show out of any one part of it. You could say like this week, let's talk about like email is a great example. I mean, when Windows, and I talked about Windows Phone and how Windows Phone in many ways is a device expression of this way of doing things. When Windows Phone first came out, people said, so I want to be able to sync Outlook to Windows Phone. I don't understand. I don't see this. Where is this? And it's like, that's not how it works. Well, when will they add that? They're not adding it. That's not how it works. And people get like, well, I don't understand. Right, because you're still using Outlook and you're centering all of your data in Outlook, and that's not the right way to do things. It's not. That's the old way of doing things. Windows 8 is the same thing. Windows 8 has a mail app. People, so how do I import a PST file? Which is an Outlook data file. You don't.
You don't.
I mean, there are outmoded email service types like POP. IMAP to a lesser degree. There's actually nothing wrong with IMAP other than the fact that IMAP is only for mail, right? Because these services also have contacts and tasks and calendar, and ideally this service that you're connecting to would do all of those things and would be, and I think the model today is Exchange ActiveSync, not IMAP, although IMAP is sort of like EAS just for mail. Anyway, yeah, it's just you can go on and on and on. I mean, it's and the people who are used to doing it the old way, it's a brick wall. And I hear from these people all the time, because I've been writing about Windows Phone now for over 2 years, Windows 8 now for the past year. This is the type of thing that happens again and again. I don't understand. Why doesn't it do this thing? So you're saying it does less? Well, sort of. I mean, that's one way to look at it. But
look at Gmail. I mean, there are people that held out on Gmail for a while. I did. I didn't want to use Gmail. I was fine with my Outlook until I lost all my PSD file wasn't backed up properly. It was corrupted, and I lost all my emails. And guess what? I'm like, I'm never doing this again. I'm going to Gmail, and I've been fine with it. It's been all right.
As you would be. Gmail's great.
Yeah. Today I want to talk about some products that are on the market right now. Other than the cloud stuff, we regularly, and especially around this time, get emails saying, hey, which tablet should I buy? What computer should I buy right now? What's good for the $300 price range or the $500 price range? I seem to have worried a lot of people with my rant about how is Windows 8 going to perform on lower-end laptops and lower-end PCs that are on the market that really don't have higher-end components like the trackpad, for example. I'm big on this trackpad problem. And I kind of want to touch on that, and I want to go into some of the products that are on the market, especially with the tablets, Windows 8 tablets right now, because there's a lot of them on the out there. And there's a lot that are going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks, so I want to go into that a little bit. But before I do that, do you want to talk about the rumor that was out today about the Surface?
The rumor about
there's a rumor going around, and I don't know how factual it is. I'm sure there's going to be more Surfaces, but they're saying there's going to be 3 new Microsoft Surface tablets coming out in 2013. Is that a just okay? We're just saying it, or is there any kind of truth to this?
So I don't know anything about this.
Okay,
I've heard this source is actually pretty good.
Okay,
has been in the past. I look at what has been written about those 3 new devices, and I think to myself, like, this is not interesting in any way, shape, or form. The Surface thing is in many ways such a typical Microsoft product because it's one of those things that at a high level it looks great, but then it kind of falls apart in the use, And the current models, the RT1 and the Surface Pro, the one that's coming out next month, are both constrained in ways that I find distressing, and none of those 3 devices makes any sense to me at all.
The AMD one was bizarre to me.
The whole thing is bizarre to me. What we need right now in the Windows 8/RT world is less diversity in the sense that there are too many machine types, and I think we need to kind of ratchet that down a little bit.
Are you talking about from Microsoft itself, or are you talking about just the entire
the whole
market
ecosystem?
Yeah, because what do you buy?
Yeah, exactly. It's a huge problem. I have to say, well, let's just stick to the Surface thing. So I think that, I don't know, it's like they want to, Microsoft is pushing this, what they call no compromises approach. Unfortunately, it just creates things that are not excellent at any one thing,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not hard to tell people that an iPad is a really good machine and you can explain why, or other tablets. And with the Surface, it's like, well, you find yourself saying "but" a lot. Well, yeah, but it's good, but then there's this and there's this, and I certainly don't understand the point of any of these things. I think that what if I were if I were in charge of the Surface, the way I would have done it is I would have had the first machine be a Clover Trail machine, and I would wait until the Haswell chipset showed up, and that would be the Pro. And
I'm curious if the entire idea was that they were going to go to an Intel-based chipset that was lighter and faster, but they just couldn't get the chipset done because Intel kind of fell behind when it came to mobile.
I don't have the link on this, and I'm not a hardware expert, but I saw a story yesterday, I think, that was about a lower power consuming version of the Ivy Bridge chipset. And so I'm gonna spout numbers off the top of my head that probably have no bearing in reality.
Are you talking about the Intel chipset that's going to be coming out in 2 years?
No, I hope not. No, I thought it was more of an interim thing. I thought it was literally just Ivy Bridge but lower power consumption. So I want to say that this article said that like the ARM chip that's in the current Surface RT is when the thing's up and running is about 5 watts, whereas a typical i5 is more like 17 watts or something. And so you can kind of see the difference. When a Clover Trail or an ARM chip goes into this deep sleep state, when it's in connected standby, it's like a milliwatt of some kind. It's some number of milliwatts. It's like a tiny amount of power that's consumed. And so if you could imagine an Ivy Bridge type chip that kind of bridged the gap between those two numbers, it would make a big difference. I mean, because the problem with Surface Pro is that thing is going to have a fan in it.
Yeah.
If it's a current gen Ivy Bridge chip set, which they're saying it is. And that kind of ruins the experience. The other thing that's weird is when you approach these devices, you have to kind of ask yourself, do I want a tablet first that can sometimes be used as a computer? Or do I want a computer first that can sometimes be used as a tablet? Because these devices are never going to be great at both. And so I would say that a Surface with the current screen size, good as a tablet. Not so good as a computer. It's just it's a little too small.
But is it? Oh, you're talking about screen size, not performance wise.
I'm talking about the whole
thing.
But yes, size essentially. The problem is once you get up to a screen size that is decent for a computer, you've created a tablet that's kind of big and awkward, right? It's not perfect for that kind of a thing. So I think that's I think that's the dark side of the no compromises thing. Is it really dark? Is it really no compromises, or is it in fact nothing but compromises?
I think because this is the beginning, this is the infancy of these. It's funny to say it's the infancy of mobile computing. Considering we've been doing it for a while, right? Laptops are mobile, the tablets are mobile, but it really is in its infancy, and we don't know where we're going yet. Intel recently, and we spoke about this on a couple of other shows, the company's adapting a 14 nanometer Broadwell chipset, and with this chipset, it's a ball grid array, and it's soldered onto the motherboard. It's not a replaceable CPU, and a lot of people, a lot of enthusiasts are freaking out, saying, "Oh my God!"
By the way, that is exactly what we were just talking about.
That's exactly what we're saying, right?
That is ludicrous.
So what they're
that's
looking
like
to
saying,
do.
so wait, but you're telling me that I can't go into the engine of my vehicle, remove it myself, change the oil, change all the seals, whatever you would do on an engine. I have no idea. And then put it back myself. No, this is unacceptable. See, to me, this is the evolution of this thing.
It is the evolution, but see, I could understand. I could totally understand where people are getting upset because they're saying, "Well, how about my gaming high-performance computer that I want to build myself?" How this is going to work? It's going to force the motherboard suppliers, the OEMs, to make a motherboard with a CPU. So you buy the CPU and the motherboard, and pros are Intel is able to control the other chipsets on this motherboard. Everything works well together. Less power is needed. The performance now, they're saying, well, there's going to be a performance issue. And if you read this story, they're not saying they're eliminating the socket-based Intel chipsets. They're not talking about that. They're talking about
eventually do that, by the way. But this is the necessary evolution of this.
Well,
stuff.
this is the problem that Intel's facing, right? This is why Intel has not been a major player in the mobile world. They fell behind ARM because there's a number of reasons, but
they don't move quickly enough for this market.
No, and it's fascinating because they fell behind in the PC market, in the desktop market, and they destroyed over the last 5 years. They've killed AMD as far as performance goes.
Sure.
Why haven't they been able to do it with mobile? And now they're talking about more of a mobile, smaller, faster chipset, lighter chipset, and people are freaking out. Well, how about my big giant desktop at home?
I'm going to do nothing but continually refer back to that Steve Jobs biography because I just am amazed by how often the stuff that we're talking about came up with those guys like years ago. So when they were making the iPad, the first iPad, Steve Jobs wanted to use an Atom processor. The guys inside of the other guys at the hardware engineering team at Apple said, no, these guys don't move quickly enough to do this. They'll never do that. And Steve Jobs said, no, you don't understand. This is Intel. They're never going to screw us over. They'll get this right.
Yeah.
And the guy, one of the guys in charge of it, there's a story in the book where he throws his identity tag from Apple down on the table. He says, I'm leaving this company if you don't switch this thing to this ARM-based chipset instead. These are the guys who move quickly enough. These are the guys who are going to give us the power management that we need, the mobility that we need, the thinness and smallness and lightness, and the fanless design and all that kind of stuff. And eventually Steve Jobs came around to that, obviously, because that's what they went with. The Atom processor would have been like, can you imagine?
It would have been awful.
It would have been awful.
Especially
and
at that
how
time.
we know it's awful? Because that's what the PC world went with in those netbooks.
And the PC world hates it.
Yes.
If the PC world hates it, they're not gonna love it on the Mac. Well, maybe Mac people would love it.
No. It just would have been terrible. It just would have been terrible.
But it's interesting, right? Because this is what we're talking about, and Intel's saying, "Hey, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to a smaller chipset." Now they're saying this isn't going to come out till 2015, 2016.
Okay.
Well, so it's a while from now.
So for the people who were freaked out about my forward-leaning attitude about cloud computing, I guess I will say that, I'm a PC guy. And when it comes to PCs, I kind of have an old-fashioned perspective. A lot of it is, you could argue, is tradition. But, for the stuff I need to do, I really need these tools that just don't exist on ARM. It is hard. It's easy to talk about, but it's harder to do when you look at a machine that's really constrained. It looks just like Windows 8, but it kind of isn't, and it doesn't run any of those desktop apps. I still have a problem with it. I have a problem recommending this thing to other people because I just think it's going to be a bad experience. That may change over time.
Could it be possible that the reason why I'm just trying to come up with an excuse on why they went with the way that they did, and I understand that certain features of Windows RT, when Windows 8 wasn't incorporated in Metro or the modern UI. That was one reason why desktop is there. But could it have possibly been that they had to go with ARM because Intel was not prepared, and they couldn't get the performance that they wanted?
Tammy Reller, as recently as a couple weeks ago, at a Credit Suisse event, said that Windows 8 was designed for the future, and the future of computing, as Microsoft sees it, she didn't say this way, but this is how it was designed, is that this system works as it does on a tablet today, like an iPad or on an iPhone, any smartphone, right? That the system manages certain things in a much more efficient manner. And obviously, if you have a big honking computer with an i7 chip in it and 16 gigs of RAM, there's no need for those programs to go out of memory, But they're also designing it to run on a system that has 2 gigabytes of RAM and has 32 gigabytes of storage on the disk. And, it has to run on this range of device types. And so ARM obviously today represents the very low end of that. But what it gives you in return is crazy amounts of battery life, fanless performance, which is, frankly, kind of a big deal. And it's the difference between a device and a PC, right? And that has good and bad connotations. There's no doubt about it. But they're clearly looking at that as the future.
Yeah.
They brought people forward. This system runs on normal PCs. You can still do it. And it's certainly viable in that sense. But, all of the new stuff is pretty much predicated on the desktop not happening. You don't get the battery life on Windows RT. Well, they don't. You can't run any apps. They have a limited number of apps, so they know what it is. So they design the few apps that are there to run as efficiently as possible. But they don't have to think about that stuff in Metro because that's how the entire platform is designed. So going forward, when the desktop disappears, that stuff all becomes more efficient for everybody across the board.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It really is fascinating because there's no Like, I think everybody could see what Microsoft is doing. I
Yeah.
think we could all see the future, but there's a lot of issues along the way.
Give them some credit. They are moving to this very quickly, right? It's
Well, this
difficult. It's hard. I mean, this is hard.
Well, this week, didn't we get news this week that they said they're going to be looking at, officially we got information from them that they're going to be updating Windows at a much quicker pace now.
They're updating everything at a much quicker pace now. This is the way things go. So they established a timeline for updating their online services, and they are applying that schedule to all of their products: Windows, Office, Server, Office 365, which is a service, all of that stuff. The Office servers like SharePoint, Exchange. I mean, this is the way things are going forward. I mean, things are changing. It doesn't mean they won't come up with a Windows 9 probably and call it Windows 9, but this is the world of the future and of now. Frankly, I mean, it's the way it is.
Interesting stuff.
Think about Chrome, by the way.
What about
I saw someone mentioned that some time ago that Chrome was up to some crazy. I should go look at it. I don't have Chrome running here. So if you were to actually look at Chrome, and you go to about Chrome, Chrome is on version 23, right? Version 23 sounds like a crazy number. Like Windows is on version 8,
Yeah.
So they're on version 23. And I remember some blogger at some point in the recent past ridiculed them for this. Like, that's stupid. That's not the way we do things. This is, shows you how immature this is. It's like, no, this is what happens when a company, Google, which is used to creating web services, writes software that runs on a PC, and they update it in exactly the same fashion. The version number doesn't matter. You're not running Chrome 23. You're running Chrome,
Should the version number matter at all?
No, almost not at all. And so this is Microsoft responding to that trend. So even though you may go into a store and buy a disk that has Windows 8 on it, that thing is going to be updated in a very modern fashion because that's the world we live in. They need to be able to compete with the Googles of the world and the other online services.
Yeah. Now let's go into the topic that we had initially said we're going to talk about it, and that's some of the stuff that you can buy this holiday season. And it kind of ties in because a lot of people are asking about tablets. A lot of people want to get a tablet, but they don't know what to get. And we're not talking about the iPad. I want to talk about the Android market, and I want to talk about the Windows tablet market, because these two are extremely confusing to people that really don't follow up with this stuff. I think with Android, it's far more confusing than with Microsoft, because you're looking at stuff from $100 all the way to $700, and nobody knows what to buy.
Sure.
My answer is pretty simple. I tell people, if you're looking for a 7-inch tablet, get the Nexus 7. If you're looking for a 10-inch tablet, get the Nexus 10.
That's a little more. No, just for Google. You mean for Android?
For Android itself.
Okay.
I wouldn't bother with the Samsung ones. I wouldn't bother with the Asus ones. Well, considering this is Asus, but
but it's got that pristine Google build on it. Yep,
sure.
I completely agree with that.
I think it's silly, and I think this is a problem, and I'll probably get a lot of crap for this, but I think it's really silly when you go and buy a Samsung Galaxy S3 and your phone is just cluttered with Samsung stuff that you really don't want, nor can you delete.
But the Samsung has that cool little like the cover that flips over the front.
Oh yes, the paper. What is it? It's like paper or plastic. Who knows?
You get that.
It's something awful. But I mean, to me, it bothers me because you're not really getting the true experience. There's a lot of crap on here, and you don't really need it. Yep. And you're forced to it. And people I brought this up to someone, and they go, well, you could root the phone, and you could put your own ROM. But nobody, you shouldn't. No, I don't want to do that.
That's the old world response. That's, I need to be able to, change the engine in my car. No. That's not, we're not giving advice to people like that. Those people already have their own way of doing things. They don't need us,
But can you imagine, can you imagine like a regular person,
no,
and they're complaining, and they go, and the store turns around. It's like, well, if you don't want this, you could go and you could root the phone and find some shady guy with a ROM and sync the ROM, but you may mess up the phone. It's a possibility, but you could go and do that.
Sure. No way. That's ridiculous.
Their heads are going to explode. I mean, it's bizarre to me.
Right.
But
now, by the way, just to the some people are talking about Amazon and whether it's whether it's Android. I would say that the Kindle Fire HD devices, which also come in 7 and I guess like 9-inch versions, are good alternatives too, but they are very specifically content only.
Yeah, and they're targeting a totally different group of people.
Those are aimed at like regular consumers, and they're fine. They're really good. In fact, the 7-inch version of the Kindle Fire HD is the one that I personally like and use the most. It's a great little device, and it's not exactly the same as a Nexus, but this is Amazon's ecosystem on a device. The thing to remember about Amazon is that I don't think they care at all about the devices, to be honest. I think what they're pushing is the ecosystem. And I want to get to the point where Amazon services are available equally on all devices.
Meaning,
so that,
what do you mean? Like all Amazon devices or all devices?
No, on all devices. And so I think the issue I have with the Amazon stuff right now is that, maybe I would prefer to use an iPad mini, or maybe I would prefer to use that Nexus 7. But I can only get certain Amazon features on an Amazon device. Some newspaper subscriptions, for example, New York Times and the Boston Globe, certainly. The ability to do whisper sync between audiobooks from Audible and ebooks from Kindle, that kind of thing. And movie rentals are not a huge issue. I'm sorry, movie rentals or TV and movie purchases are not a huge deal because obviously the Nexus has their own thing with Google Play, and obviously Apple's got a cute little store you may have heard of as well. So those devices are well served in that way. But I'm hoping for this day where this stuff just kind of converges, and that you can choose a device on the merits of the device. Because today, this decision really kind of comes down to what you use. People who are on Amazon all the time doing a lot of stuff with Amazon products and services should get a Kindle. There's no doubt about it. If you're a Gmail user and you use, a lot of Google stuff.
You're absolutely right. It's not about the hardware. It's about the ecosystem that you're invested in. I'll give you a perfect example. I have an iPad. I have a Mac, but I don't have an Apple TV.
Right.
And I have a Google TV because I like the fact that it's incorporated with, the actual cable. But over the last couple of weeks, I'm like, I really wish I could just stream this from my iPad.
Yeah.
And you can't. I mean, you can if you get Plex and you sign up. I mean, it's stuff that you could do, but it would be great if I just had Apple TV and I could just sync it right through. And I think that's what people care about now. The fact that everything is the same and I could easily just hit one button and there it is on my TV, or there I bought it. And I think it depends on what ecosystem that you're in. If you're in the Apple ecosystem, you're going to be pretty happy with Apple devices. Android, on the other hand, is a little confusing, right? Yeah. Because
it's also the ecosystem's not complete.
It's not.
And there's weird stuff there. I would say the one place where Google Play really falls apart is in its support of non-Android devices. And so, for example, if you were to buy a movie from Google Play, you could watch it in HD on an Android device. But if you wanted to watch it on your computer, you're stuck to a web browser experience, and it's standard definition. There's no HD available.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's kind of the most limited of all of those things. It's too bad that it's that way. Now, a lot of people are living that life of the future that we were talking about. They don't have a PC, so maybe that's not a problem. But I do like the availability of this stuff everywhere. Literally, last night I had watched an HBO movie about Alfred Hitchcock and the making of the Birds and Marnie, two of the movies that he made with Tippi Hedren or whatever her name is. And I wanted to watch The Birds, and I had been watching it back and forth on in my office, and then we do have an Apple TV still out in the living room. And it's one of those things, like, it's the way this stuff should work. It's the way SkyDrive works with documents. It's the way WhisperSync works with Kindle books, where you're partway through in here, you go in the other room, you turn it on a different device, and you just pick up where you left off, And that kind of functionality is so key for normal people, just to have a good experience,
And to be honest, the Kindle is created so you use Amazon, you buy stuff. I mean, they make it extremely easy on a Kindle.
Yeah, it's like a gateway drug.
I mean, it really is. It really is. And that's what they want. And you know what?
Of course.
That's what you're paying for. You're buying the device, and you're in Audible, you're in their bookstore, you're in the Amazon store, and you're not really caring about everything else. And if you need to search something, you could search. If you want an app, you got an app. I think it's different people buy these devices. As far as Android goes,
I told you this story about my sister, right? She wanted a tablet, and she said She says, well, will this thing print? I said, print? What do you,
What do you
I
print?
don't understand. What are you printing? And she's like, well, I want to store recipes on it, but then I need to print them so I can use them in the kitchen.
Yeah. That's really
No,
funny.
like, what are you talking about? That's crazy.
But I want to go into the Windows tablet
Yeah.
area because that's really confusing to me.
I don't have good news for anybody there.
I mean, what should I buy? If I want to buy one right
Right.
now, for me, you know me pretty well. Which tablet should I buy?
You can't answer that question without asking lots of questions of your own because, you know, I know you, but what would you use it for? You know, it depends. I mean, do you want like a media tablet kind of thing where it's just about content?
I want a portable laptop.
Or do you want you want a replacement? So
Like I want a replacement. I want to be able to dock it if I'm sitting down at a desk and I want to be able to take this thing and walk around the house or sit in bed and do whatever on it.
Yeah. So the problem is, you know, this is always true as a general statement, but the one thing I would say is you should wait. You know, the best devices aren't out yet, and obviously there'll be better devices within months. Okay, but assuming you actually need a computer right now.
Right now.
Then the conversation turns to that thing I said earlier, primarily a laptop or primarily a tablet, because those are two very different kinds of devices.
And I think that's really confusing.
Yeah. There's I have here a 13-inch IdeaPad Yoga, which is a decent Ultrabook that swivels into weird shapes, you know, like a tablet. It's not awesome as a tablet. It's a little strange because the keyboard's always on the outside. So it's either under the device on the table or it's in the back, you know, facing the other direction. It's just it's weird. It's just
so if I'm holding it like this, I'm pretty much pressing the keys.
Yeah, they're on the back.
Yeah.
You're feeling them on your fingers.
Yeah, that's silly.
That's a little weird. I mean, people use that and complain about it. You know, you get used to it, but it's different and it's weird, you know. I have a Samsung ATIV Smart PC, which is very light, reasonably thin. It's plasticky in the way that, you know, Samsung devices often are. It only has 2 gigs of RAM because it's a Clover Trail machine. That's the limit. You know, it's got a. I'll show it. See it?
People want to see it.
Yeah, it's nothing to look at. It's just a tablet. But it's, you know, I can't say to you like this thing is awesome. You should get this. It's good. It's good for what it is. You know, there are going to be more devices from Lenovo. In particular, I think Lenovo is making one of every single kind of device that's coming down the pike. You know, I don't know. A lot of these devices, including the Samsung I just showed you, come with the clip-on keyboard bases. Some of those have batteries in them. The Samsung's does not, but in those cases, it will dramatically increase the battery life. The battery life on this thing is already crazy.
The other issue is, I mean, an 11-inch tablet is too big. Or 12, I'm sorry, a 13-inch tablet is too big, but a 10-inch tablet is too small to be a laptop. So you kind of there's no sweet spot for this.
That's what I mean. And that's why I said, you know, you got to think about what's more important to you. To give you I'll see if this makes any sense. I'll give you a size comparison of the Surface to the IdeaPad, right? So the Surface would be a very small. Let's see if that makes sense. The Surface would be a very small computer, right? But the IdeaPad is a very big tablet. Neither one of them is perfect, right? Neither one of them is great at everything. And so it really does come down to what is most important to you.
So
you know, how do you intend to use it?
Could the argument be that possibly Microsoft is wrong to have the same device, the same operating system on 2 different devices?
No, I think that we're a little bit early in the curve. You know, one of the things that's holding back Windows 8 and Windows RT is the lack of applications. I think those will come and that will make a difference, and we'll see. You know, I think we'll see. Right now, I am A-okay with having a computer in my bag that is very thin and light because it's an Ultrabook that I use for work, and I can bring a small tablet. In my case, it might be an Amazon Kindle Fire HD, but it could be anything. It could be the Nexus 7 that you like, or it could be the iPad Mini. It doesn't matter. And those things really don't add a lot of weight. They go in the bag, and that has my content on it, and I'm good to go. And that's okay for me. A lot of the people who use an iPad just use the iPad. And if your needs are fairly limited, we're talking,
And it's fine for you, yeah.
yeah, then, email, web browsing, Facebook, whatever. I mean, yeah, something like that would be fine for you.
Tech Escape in our chat room wants to know if you've heard of a unit that's pretty close to perfect, but that you haven't used yet. Is there anything out there that like people have raved about that you haven't really played around with?
I actually do think that there's a use case that has not been addressed adequately that could be addressed by Microsoft if they just did it, which is the notion of, I talked about how they have these dock bases with keyboards in them, and that's fine for portable computing, but I would like to see a dock for the Surface that plugged into that keyboard connector on the bottom, and you plug this thing in, and it expanded the number of USB ports you have. It expanded, it give you a permanent connection for your keyboard, your mouse, your display, external speakers, a webcam, whatever it is. And you could have this system where, when you're actually getting work done, you're sitting there getting work done. You pick the thing up and go. I mean, one thing I've used this Samsung tablet. I go out in the living room. We have TV on at night. I can use it to catch up on email. I can use it to OK comments to my blog because the touch interface works good for that kind of stuff, and it's fine. I'm not going to tap out an email or a long email, certainly, or certainly an article on that thing's glass keyboard. There's no way. But it's an interesting kind of interim type usage thing. But this too does not have a desktop dock, which I would like.
I'm going to say something that you might think I'm crazy, but a couple of years ago, remember I was looking for. I think one of the first times you came on. No, I don't remember. Remember a couple of years ago, I was looking for a tablet, Windows-based tablet for my wife, and I saw that Dell that swiveled. That was awful.
Yeah, which they have a new version of now. Yeah.
Which they have a new version of. And I was looking at that, and Lenovo, I think, had a touch screen, Windows 7 laptops. I think it was a netbook. And I wasn't really, wow, this is a great device. And I'm still in that weird situation where I want to get something, and I'm not blown away by any of them. But this operating system that they're using is the operating system for what I want. But I can't find the hardware to match it.
Yeah.
Is it possible that the hardware manufacturers still don't understand what what we want? Because if you look at it, I mean, I'll give you a perfect example.
It's very possible.
I mean, it's crazy, but
I don't know that we know what we want, right? I mean, isn't it true? I mean, one of the, to keep going back to Steve Jobs, because you know how much I love Steve Jobs and Apple.
You love him so much.
Yeah, when you see the iPad, when they first announced it, the initial reaction of many people, including me, was, oh, it's a big iPod Touch. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
It's not until you use it that you sort of appreciate the fact that this thing is bridging a gap and it makes some sense and all that kind of thing. Sometimes the right thing will just hit you in the face and you didn't realize that it was something you needed until you experience it, So some people will be A-okay with that tablet that clips into a keyboard base, and that's exactly what they're looking for. Some people will be A-okay with the Surface, and the little flip-up keyboard thing is it's perfect. That's what they want. I need a big screen. I need certain things. I mean, I realize I'm archaic in that way. I certainly don't represent the mainstream when it comes to.
See, I'll give you an example. I mean, we're seeing a lot of these touch screen. It's not a tablet, but it's a touch screen laptop.
Yep.
On the market now, and I was talking to a relative, and they go, "Wow, it's really cool. You could touch the screen." And I personally don't want to touch my screen. I would rather want a better functioning trackpad on the laptop that's easier to use.
Yeah, but why couldn't you have both?
You can.
I think the thing about touchscreen laptops is people think that's silly because why would you want to touch a screen? But when you're touching everything else, especially when you move to different devices, maybe based on sort of the same system, you'll expect to touch it. And once you start touching screens, you will expect that. And that's one of those things where it's you have to experience it before you realize I was wrong. That what I thought would be the case about this is not the case, that I really do want to be able to touch that thing,
Would you recommend one of these? Because there's a lot of them for like $399. There's an Asus, for example, that I saw. It was $399. It's a 13-inch touchscreen entry-level laptop.
I've not used any of those. I don't know. I mean, It's certainly an inexpensive way to get into that kind of thing. You know.
Yeah, what scares me about these devices, and we're seeing a lot of them during the holiday season, if let's say Microsoft branded a laptop, and let's say Asus was the OEM, but it was a Microsoft branded Windows 8 laptop that was touchscreen and was $399, I would feel confident buying it.
Yeah.
But because I don't have any faith in the OEMs,
Right.
because I'm thinking they're going to put a really crappy touchscreen on this thing and a really crappy trackpad, I don't want to buy that $399 laptop. I would rather spend $799 and buy something that I know kind of works. It's a weird thing with me because I feel that if it had a Microsoft label on it, it's more likely to function the way it's supposed to over an Asus or an HP logo. And that's why I'm kind of disappointed that you're not crazy about the Surface, because I would have rather bought a Surface than an Asus, tablet or hybrid laptop.
Sure. The Surface is a beautiful machine. It's not hard to imagine a laptop made with this quality, and how awesome that would be. Certainly, I've always, I'm a bigger guy. I've always dreamed about using smaller computing hardware. I just can't. I have huge hands and I need to type. I mean, it's just a sad fact of life. And, the machine I cart around is a 15-inch Ultrabook, which is a very unusual machine. So, my needs are a little different. But, I have no doubt, to be honest, that, a normal human being could get around just fine with a $500 or even cheaper computer. No doubt about it, for years and years, I just don't know anything about those particular machines.
I really want to go to the stores and just play around with the trackpads on these things, because I'm still hung up
You're
on the
obsessed
trackpad.
with the trackpad.
I am obsessed because it's the one thing that everybody uses on this thing, the trackpad and the keyboard.
Okay, so I configure my trackpad to turn off when I plug in a mouse, and I plug in a mouse all the time because I can't stand the trackpad. And one of the things that has been very tough for me on Windows 8 with trackpads is that when you enable all of those Windows 8 gestures on the trackpad, you find your computer doing things that you don't intend. So, like in the old days, the worst thing that could happen with the trackpad is it would catch like a palm movement and it would move the cursor and maybe it would select something. So I'd be typing and it would select another window or something. So that was bad. But now in the Windows 8 world, you can navigate to some Metro interface in the middle of typing something because what you just triggered was a gesture, And I've done that. I've done that a lot. So I actually find myself disabling that stuff because it's just annoying.
So before we wrap it up today, because we ended up going off track like we always do. Yep. And next week, obviously, we'll talk more about this, about what to buy during the holiday season and the confusion that exists in this.
I'll wear a holiday hat next week.
You know what? You know what we have to do, and this is the last 2 weeks we do best of and worst of 2012.
Yep.
The best products that were released and the worst products, the fails of 2012. Maybe we should do the wins and the fails. I don't know, something like that.
Okay.
I have a lot of stuff that I was really disappointed with, and I'll give you one example: the iPad 3.
Okay.
I don't think it was this amazing device, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
And I know yours is going to be, you're going to have some crazy stuff on there. Like you're going to be like, oh. Every tablet that Microsoft put out this year, because it's not exactly what we wanted.
Yeah, that was actually kind of disappointing.
But if you were to sum it up and say, when do you, in your opinion, how long do they have to kind of get their act together with this and put out a device? Microsoft and their partners. How long do they have? Do they have a year from now? Does the next generation Surface have to be the device that we kind of want? I think the market is
that. I don't think it's that bad. The problem is that these things tend to snowball, so we'll have to wait and see. I mean, obviously there's a lot of bad news around Windows 8. I just would remind people, Windows 8's pretty solid, actually, fundamentally. And, we can quibble about the UI and stuff, and maybe they can fix that in that constant updating scheme that they now have, and maybe they should. But they're in a good place. So, We'll see. I think they could pull it all together. The problem that Microsoft has, again, is that they just don't know how to finish the job.
But I mean, they're not. People compare this to Vista, and I think that's
Yeah.
a ridiculous comparison because Vista was plagued with driver problems and
No, but it's the
sluggishness.
same. But it really is the same. I understand that comparison because the biggest problem with Vista was a perception problem. It was a pit they couldn't dig themselves out of quickly enough. That time, I will tell you, I was in active and constant discussions about them about how are they going to fix this problem. And my God, did they sit on it and do nothing for a year? I mean, it was awful.
Until SP1.
Yeah, and until the Mojave project, when they finally started kind of fighting back. It took them a long time. They need not to do that again. So we'll see. It's early days still. We'll see what it looks like. In January, in April, at some point they'll start announcing other figures for sales, and we'll see what it looks like. We'll see what the holiday season looks like. One of the problems they had in the first 4 weeks was that PC makers had not shipped enough devices, nor had they shipped enough device types. That's going to change before Christmas comes.
Yeah, that was. I have one last question for you because I was wondering that the entire week. I was reading the numbers, and they were saying, well, the numbers weren't great, and that there were a lot of leftover Windows 7 laptops from back to school that didn't sell that we're selling now.
Yeah,
but
it's a channel issue.
But here's my issue with this. When I went and bought Windows 7, the day that it came out, I actually went 2 days prior, and I couldn't buy any computers because Best Buy took every computer off the shelf so they could preload Windows 7.
You remind me of my wife in that you.
Oh, thank you, Paul.
You never forgive a slight.
Never.
You this story. You're still burned by
I am
this.
burned by this because I went and buy, but every computer the following day had Windows 7, so they were selling only Windows 7 computers.
Yeah.
How is that not the case for Windows 8? That every computer being sold.
This is why Microsoft was upset with PC makers. So you have to remember in the months leading up to the launch, there were various events like Computech, and then the PC makers had their own events where they announced all these machines. I still get emails every day. People say, "Where's the NV2? Where's the whatever?" And people are looking for particular machines. The angst that Microsoft had internally about their PC maker partners was that these guys promised they were going to ship these things in time for the launch, and there were like 4 devices available when Windows 8 launched. How do companies that depend on these sales screw up so badly? This is the central issue of the double-edged sword that is the relationship that Microsoft has with these companies. They are completely clueless. So they're gonna hit eventually, and then we'll see. It is a little early in some ways. I mean, Microsoft knows that things did not go as well as they wanted at the launch. That's a fact. But we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
We'll see what happens. And we have to wrap it up. It's over an hour in. Next week we're going to be doing something different. Do you want to do best of or worst of? What do you think?
Yeah, right. Let's do worst of.
Okay, that'll be
fun. Wait, maybe we complain too much. Let's do
best of. Okay, we'll do best of because we complain way too much, and so we'll do best of.
We'll just talk about stuff that we like.
Yeah, which isn't
it's
a lot.
It's going to be Android heavy. I just want to prep you for that.
Really?
No.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, I thought maybe I passed out and I woke up in a delusional dream, and it's like, okay, it'll be fun. WinSupersite.com for all things Paul Thurrott. You can go there, check it out. Paul also does a phenomenal show, Windows Weekly, every Thursday at 2 p.m. East on twit.tv. Next week's show will be 5 minutes long with things that we like. I think
this has got to be something I like this year.
Yeah, there has to be some stuff. We'll look into it.
I have a lot on my fail list, though. I got to tell you.
I know, me too.
We can start that with like Google's attempts to sell the Nexus 4 by itself. That was always hilarious.
Well, they had like four Nexus 4s in stock, and they sold out.
Yeah, or we could have like a 10-second conversation about our favorite Windows 8 apps. It's like
Slapdash. That's my favorite Windows 8 app. That's it. That's about it. You know what we could do? Here's a great thing we could do. So we get to everything. We'll list the top, let's say, 10 items that we love for the year.
Yep.
And then we'll go into them one by one. Okay. So we'll say, okay, boom, 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 boom. This is what I like. And then we'll talk about, certain ones that we want to give more examples of, because I know what will happen is we'll talk about one item and we'll do like 45 minutes on that item.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay.
All right, so that's what we'll do.
We
All right.
have to have a timer like a chess match.
You know what? Maybe we should do a timer and like a buzzer, so we'll have like 45 seconds to explain why we like it so much.
So
yeah, that's
stay
actually a
on
good
target,
idea.
Stay on target.
That'll be good. If you miss any portion of the show, of course, you can go to our website, gfknetwork.com. You can subscribe to us on the is it proper for me to say Windows Phone Marketplace?
Not anymore. Well,
Okay.
it's still called that on Windows Phone 7. It's called the Windows Phone Store now.
Okay, Windows Phone Store. We're in there under podcast, so you can subscribe to us there. And, of course, we're on iTunes.
We're one of the top podcasts.
We are, yeah. I think we are.
We are.
We're like one of the top whatever podcasts, which is great. And I appreciate it. By the way, guys, we have been experiencing problems with our server. If you try to download the show and it fails for whatever reason, we're trying to figure out where the problem is, because I'm not able to replicate it. And every time we do replicate it and tell our hosting company that we're having the problem, they look and they're like, everything's fine. We're able to download it. So if it fails for whatever reason, please let me know, like you've been doing, so I could determine the time frame and hit re-download. It should be able to download it after it fails. I don't know what's going on. It's a bizarre issue. And, of course, it's the end of the year and everything starts falling apart at this time. So I apologize for that. GFKnetwork.com. You can follow Paul on Twitter at The Rot. I'm Andrew Zarian on Twitter. I don't have a lot to say. Just a lot of drunk talk. Sometimes it's fun.
We'll have to get some holiday drinks.
Yeah. Like, I hate eggnog.
Yeah,
I
who
hate
doesn't?
it. It's
Who
gross.
does?
It really is. It's disgusting. I don't know
That's
why
why I
people
need to
drink
drink
it.
Baileys.
I think people drink it because of self-hatred. You just want to torture yourself. Yeah, Baileys. Yeah,
It's tradition. That's why. It's like I'm sucking this stuff down, and it's terrible, but it's Christmas.
It's Christmas. We're gonna do it. You know what? The next 2 weeks we'll be drinking holiday drinks,
There you go.
and I'll be in festive colors like periwinkle. And yeah, we'll see you all next week, guys. Good night.